Hey guys, it's me, Michael Lenoci. Make sure you check out some of my upcoming shows. Tickets at michaellenoci.com.
All right, guys, guess who's back? Michael's back. It's been a couple weeks, and sorry I haven't posted a video in a couple weeks, but the holidays, I'm not at my studio here in Los Angeles, so I took a couple weeks off. I know it was you know, a roller coaster of a ride those last 2 weeks. A lot of things happened in in the Miami Dolphin world. Tua had an injury pop up. He didn't play the last two games. But we beat the Browns, and we had a scenario where maybe we are going to make the playoffs, but we all kind of secretly knew that the Broncos were not going to lose to the Chiefs, and the Chiefs were going to lay it down because there's no way they were going to even give a possibility of the Bengals making the playoffs. They were not going to let that happen, and they'd rather have a rookie quarterback in the playoffs than, Burrow or even Tua. Would Tua have even played? We don't even know. More concerns for the future of the Miami Dolphins. But before we get into it, I have to ask everyone to subscribe to the channel, like my videos. If you don't know, I'm a stand-up comedian, and my goal is to tour and perform and do a live podcast in front of Miami Dolphin fans, as well as a comedy show. So the only way that is possible is with you guys. So like, subscribe, comment your opinions on the channel. Let's get into it. If you've been following and you watch my channel, I like to stay very optimistic. I like to look at what good things are coming out of it. An 8-9 year, we went 8-9. I said earlier, are we going to have our fifth straight winning season? We didn't. We had a losing season. It was a very rough losing season. I was watching some of the Tua highlights over the year, for the whole year, and so many games where you're like, oh man, like we should have won that. We could have won that. Like throughout the year, there's always a couple games when you don't make the playoffs that in your heart while you're watching it, like, oh, this is going to come back to haunt us. And I had that, the first time I had that feeling was against the Colts. I said, oh, this is a game where we're up 10 in the fourth. I go, oh, this is going to come back to haunt us. And sure enough, it did ultimately. Because if we would have went 9-8 and that was one of the wins, maybe it doesn't even make a difference. But maybe we play the last game of the season differently and we win against the Jets. Who knows? Another one was the Cardinals game. We were up 10, and you're like, what's going on? And Tua looked kind of good, but there was something off about the team. And then, it's just two simple games like that you could have flipped around and turned to wins, and, you're 10-7. And obviously there's games that we won that we could have flipped around and those have been losses. Sure. So you could argue both ways. But ultimately, it was a very frustrating season from what we saw the first 2 years of Mike McDaniel. We saw some sloppy play on the offensive line. In the secondary of the defense, there was some sloppy play. High expectations for our safeties. Outcome was a little underwhelming, to say the least. But overall, let's just jump right into it. Forget about Tyreek Hill. You know what I mean? Like I love having him as a player on the team. He was exciting, but this year it wasn't as exciting, and I don't know why. I don't know why they didn't throw the ball down the field. Is it because they wanted to get the ball out of Tua's hands quicker? Who knows? But is it that bad if Tyreek's not on the team next year? If we actually think about it? Like, we saw what Mike McDaniel can do, right? He can, his offensive adjustments, all right? Now, I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic and pro Mike McDaniel right now because the first 2 years you saw an offense that got figured out late in the season. We know that's a fact, right? We started off hot, and then towards the end of the year, they got figured out. The run game was not there. And then they couldn't pass the ball and do those deep in routes with Tyreek and Waddle because they were playing two safeties deep, and it was just stopped, and we didn't have an answer. This year, he showed an adjustment where you could argue he created a Pro Bowl tight end. Now, he wasn't selected the Pro Bowl, but I think, how they have the reserves and people drop out of the Pro Bowl. Like, Travis Kelce's not going to be in the Pro Bowl game, so I think that's going to go to Jonnu Smith, assuming. assuming that, Travis Kelce's in the AFC Championship at the very least and just doesn't want to play. Mike McDaniel showed that he created a place where we had a pretty consistent tight end. And I think that going forward, even if Jonnu's not on the team going forward of a few years from now, like that's a good system. Like if you look at the system you had, outside of the running game not being there, it's funny, the running game was there when Tua was not there. And then when he came back, maybe people correlate it with Austin Jackson going out, but Mike McDaniel showed us a different offense than what we were used to. And it wasn't exciting, and it was a little frustrating at times because we were spoiled, but he did show he can make adjustments. So I think that's important to kind of grab at. You didn't get the numbers you wanted from Tyreek and Waddle, and offensively, touchdowns were really a lot lower. Our red zone offense wasn't that great. I mean, I think we kicked like 39 field goals. You want to turn that number into 21. If you look at it, it was one of the Jason Sanders' greatest years. That's never a good sign, right? We couldn't score in the red zone. We weren't good at short yardage runs. And I think that goes to the lack of an offensive line. But offensively, he worked with what he could. And then when Tua was in the game, the offense was producing points. Now, it wasn't the same way, but they were producing points. The running game wasn't necessarily as sharp as it could have been, but it showed us a world where maybe we don't even need Tyreek. That's what I'm saying. It's like if you move Tyreek's money and you're running an offense with Jalen Waddle, Jonnu Smith, HN. I thoroughly believe you build an offense around HN. I think if you look at his numbers, it's very similar to what Alvin Kamara was his first 2 years. And that's an electric offensive player that you can build around with a stronger offensive line. I mean, you have an offensive line that was built for screens and outside zone runs, which is great. They're fast linemen. They got to be able to move. But imagine if you had an offensive line that was just in your face, run it up the middle. Also, you have HN out there for quick little passes. Like we've never had. Someone brought this up earlier. We've never had an offensive line where Tua can sit back there for 5 seconds and break the defense down. So it's always quick throws, get it out quick. This offensive line was built off of being fast and running screens. But who's to say that we can't have an offense with Mike McDaniel and his brilliance, which some of you might not agree with, but there is some brilliance there. And you're running it through Jonnu Smith. You have your fast guy with Waddle. You have HN. You have a strong O-line. You also have a young wide receiver that looks like there's a lot of potential for some fun plays with Malik Washington. You draft a wide receiver in maybe the second or third round. So I see a world without Tyreek where it's not needed. If you take Tyreek out of the offense this year, it's the same thing. It's not like he was the first 2 years where he was really the center and focal point of the offense. So I'm fine if he wants to leave. If he wants to be a brat, go ahead and leave. I'm not here for that. You know what I mean? Like, I was happy that he didn't get all diva the first 2 years. And this year he was pretty good. But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised he would want to get up and leave. But I don't know where he thinks he's going to go. Who's going to take on that contract? What team does he think if we do trade him, we're trading him to the NFC. Or we would trade him to the West. So we'd trade him to the Chargers or the Raiders or the Broncos. That's it. Just because you want him to mess with the Chiefs. That's the only thing you would do. The only thing that benefits the Dolphins of trading him is trading him to the AFC West. You would never trade him to the North. You wouldn't trade him to the South. You would trade him to the AFC West, and it wouldn't be the Chiefs. And then you would trade him to the NFC, and he's out of our sight. He's not even in our league. If that's a possibility, if that even happens. You're seeing today already, Mike McDaniel and Greer, they talked to him. Nothing has been said outside of where he's backtracked on his words, but it's early. I think he's also a 30-year-old emotional, immature guy who has $100 million in his bank account. I think that he was reacting and he was upset that he didn't break 1,000 yards. He saw the scoreboard and saw the Broncos were killing him and that he wasn't going to make the playoffs. He was very frustrated this year. Maybe he sees where's this team going to go? And a lot of us can think that too. but he's just frustrated. But I don't think it's necessarily over. I don't know. But I don't know. I'm just speculating. I don't think we have a Jimmy Butler situation where that can't be fixed. He is for sure out of Miami, and he's not going to be a Heat player. But this Tyreek situation, we got a lot of time. Because even if we were going to trade him, it wouldn't be till after the draft. So you're talking about June. So now we're in January. We have 6 more months of this Tyreek drama. So buckle up. We're not going to have any answers till summer. I guarantee you. I don't think you're going to have anything happen before April, because I saw I on Twitter somewhere someone mentioned that trading him before summer would cost us more money. So then why wouldn't they wait till after the draft? Also, teams will know what their situation is after the draft and how they feel. Maybe someone has a young quarterback and they want a very good wide receiver for that young quarterback. Also, in that time, Miami could do a lot of things differently in the draft, free agency, releasing, re-signing players. That makes Tyreek go, okay, I overreacted. I'll buy back in. I think we give this one more shot. There's a world where that happens. So maybe Tyreek being upset is a blessing in disguise. That's all I'm saying as a Dolphin fan, because arguably making him the highest paid wide receiver, you overpaid him, you overpaid Waddle, you overpaid Tua. You're in a shitty situation financially, okay? You don't have a good O-line. Is Armstead even come back? You have Austin Jackson, who's played great, but he's good as a zone running lineman and a screen lineman, but not as a pass protector, not the greatest. So, there's a lot of things that have question marks. How does this team improve and go from 8-9 to back to an 11-6, 12-5 team, if not better? Now, you assume if Tua doesn't get hurt and plays all 17 games, I think it's fair to assume that we are a 10-7, 11-6 team. I would say, look, he didn't play 6 games. We went 2-4 in those 6 games. I would say that give me 2 of those losses, flip them around, we're 10-7, okay? And then maybe with continuity and chemistry, they win one of the games that they lost that he was in because, he was fresh and wasn't rusty. So maybe they do go 11-6 again. Who knows? But there was still something off offensively, and ultimately, you got to have that run game be like it was last year, and I think you build around Achane. But I also think that we need a culture change, and I think the culture change starts with the defense. I think Coach Weaver, who's going to be interviewed for head coaching jobs, I don't think he'll take any. I don't think he'll necessarily get hired either. But I think we have something special here, and we haven't had that defensive culture since Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas. And I think that's very important to have because it's something that Minnesota has. With Brian Flores, they have a great defensive culture, and this is the first year in Mike McDaniel's 3 years that he's had an actual culture defensively. And I think we have a young core there that is great to build on. Outside of our safeties underperforming, I think you have Jordan Brooks, who's a middle linebacker that we haven't seen since Zach Thomas. I mean, Jerome Baker was fine, but you knew there was things that he lacked. So I like Jordan Brooks. We love Zach Sealer, who another Pro Bowl snub, who could probably be a late add. He's unbelievable. There's the brilliance of signing him long term and getting rid of Christian Wilkins. He produced way better numbers. All right, and then you have Chop Robinson, who showed highlights of a star in the second half of the season. So now you have Brooks, Sealer, Chop Robinson, the core of your defense, on top of Jalen Phillips coming back on a contract year and Bradley Chubb as a leader with Jalen Ramsey. And Kader Kodu, pretty good mediocre cornerback, plays good slot. He'll be around. I like those pieces with Weaver. I think that, with this first pick, we have the 13th overall pick. Ideally, I think it goes without saying that you're going to take the best tackle. Maybe it's the guy from Texas. I haven't done my research yet, but I'm seeing that there's a couple good tackles that will be available there. And I think that's what you got. You got to take the best lineman there. And outside of that, in the second round, maybe you take a safety, or maybe we grab a better one in free agency for cheaper. But I don't expect them to return with Javon Holland. But I like the core. And I think that we can build off of changing the culture defensively. We're a defensive team with a great offensive coach. That could be a thing. Right now we've led with offense. Offensive coach, offensive coach. Who cares about our defense? Let's score 70 points. Let's score 50 points. Let's score 40 points. Okay, fine. But how about a defense is like, hey, we're not going to let teams score more than 17 points, even the good ones. You just got to put up 20. Great offensive coach with a good run game. A good run game, a great running back, a Kalmara type offense where, hey, and you have a great tight end to throw the ball to, and then you have a fast wide receiver on the outside. But it's not all about Tua needs to throw 4,500 passing yards, 30 touchdowns. More, hey, okay, 3,800 yards passing, 25 touchdowns. Just, not the deep ball threat. It's a little bit more boring, but it's efficient, right? And our culture is this is one of the best defensive teams in the league. Defense wins championships. Just a suggestion. We like Coach Weaver, and if he continues to do what he's doing, yeah, you want a coordinator that's going to get a head coaching job. That means your defense was very, very good. So next year, if you have a top 5 defense again with this coach and you add in some veterans that will help, like Calais Campbell retiring, but you bring in another guy, but maybe you don't have to because you have Bradley Chubb, and hopefully he stays healthy, and you have Jalen Phillips stay healthy, and you have Chop Robinson. We get more pressure on the quarterbacks and actually get sacks. You have Sealer leading the interior defense. We pick up a young cornerback in the draft, maybe a young safety, and then you bring in a different type of Jordan Poyer, someone who's a bit more reliable and doesn't give you a unnecessary roughness penalty to lose you the game against his former team. Shots thrown, sure. But I think there's something there with a culture change. This is why I'm not upset about the Tyreek thing. I'm more upset about Jimmy Butler. Like, it's sad. He was great for 5 years. I loved him in Miami. But I also feel like we didn't do enough to build around him. And now we're watching Tyler Hero play great. And sorry to get off of the Dolphins, but just to like kind of emotionally be on the same page as you guys, if you're South Florida, Miami fans, Jimmy Butler was like my second favorite Miami Heat of all time. So that one hurt more. Whereas Tyreek was so exciting. But after this year, you're like, is it Mike McDaniel's offense, or is it the way people are always preparing for him? And people even said in videos, they were like, they had 2 wide receivers, even in this Jets game. They had 2 quarterbacks follow Tyreek. I mean, even if he goes somewhere else, every team's going to prepare for this guy. They're not going to let him get 1,700 yards again. It was ridiculous. It was almost like by the end of last year, every team was like, why? I don't care. Like, have Waddle beat us. Like, they're not going to let him do that again. So why not move on from that offense? We relied on it too much. Even Tua said the year before, he's like, I was trying to help him get 2,000 yards receiving. So, maybe that's not the answer. Maybe it was fun and exciting, but maybe it's too easy to stop. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you need a quarterback that can make plays on the run and be able to improvise. And Tua's shown signs of being able to do that, but we also have never seen him with 5 seconds to throw the ball, but he's gotten better at improvising. The number one thing about Tua is he can't stay healthy. And unfortunately, that sucks. We're stuck with him for at least 2 more years. He's under contract for 3 more years, but after 2 years, we could get out of it. Just some information I pick up on from Mike Florio. He knows contracts. There's always a way to get out of these contracts where, maybe there's dead money, but, if you move on after 2 years and you have another young quarterback on a rookie contract, then it doesn't hurt the team as much. But I think the biggest concern is going forward is bringing in a veteran quarterback, whether that's Daniel Jones, unless he thinks he could go start somewhere, or Kirk Cousins, if they think they can go start somewhere, they're not going to come to Miami. That's the problem, is one of those good veterans is not going to want to come play for Miami if they think they can start somewhere else. But we need someone way better than Snoop. Huntley just doesn't have it. I mean, he had 2 horrible picks in the Jets game. It's not the answer. I would also want a veteran quarterback on top of drafting a young guy. Like, I'm okay with using a 3rd round pick, or even a 2nd round pick on a quarterback. Someone that can learn the system and maybe take over for Tua. Why not? Why not put the pressure there? Why not make him be like, hey, we don't know that you're our future. Make him more competitive. Maybe that's what he needs. Maybe that will spark him to play even better for when he is healthy. But we need someone, because if you had a better quarterback behind him, maybe they don't go 2-4. Maybe they go 4-2 in those games that he doesn't play. And that's the difference between making the playoffs and not. Keeping the GM, I stuck up for him a lot because I thought he did a good job building an exciting team. I did for a long time, and then now I turned on it when I was like, you know what? Ultimately, if you have a job and your job is to win a playoff game, right? Your job is to win it all, right? Everyone's job, all 32 GMs, their job is to win a Super Bowl. But that's not expected for you to keep your job. Everyone knows it's very hard. You typically need one of the greatest quarterbacks ever to live to do that these days. If you go back and look at history over the last 30 years, all of the Super Bowls, I would say 75% of them have been won by Hall of Fame quarterbacks. So you got to take statistics into mind. So if that's the case, you don't get fired for not winning a Super Bowl, but not winning a playoff game. You would argue, hey, every organization should win a playoff game every 5 years. Every organization should be in the playoffs every 3 to 4 years. It's built like that. The system is built like that. The NFL is built to make it to where every team can make the playoffs every 4 years. And now that the Broncos made the playoffs, the longest tenured teams to not make the playoffs are the Jets and Falcons, and that's it. Every other team in the NFL has been in the playoffs within the last 4 years. So that's proof, right? Outside of two organizations, the Falcons, since losing the Super Bowl, and the Jets have not been to the playoffs. And we know what a mess the Jets are, and the Falcons seem like they're relatively close to maybe getting rid of that because Penix looks good from what we've seen, and they got a good young core. It seems like there could be a window where they make the playoffs, whether it's the division or wild card in the next couple of years. They're on the right path. Jets, this could go a little bit longer for you. But every team should make the playoffs every 4 years. That being said, every team should win a playoff game every 5 years. Just one. Not necessarily go into the conference championship. That takes a little bit more, but win a playoff game. And if you don't, then you question the job. And then you have to ask yourself, what did they do specifically? Was it their fault that certain things didn't go right? Was it the personnel? You could argue personnel wasn't as great as it should have been. You didn't set us up with a good offensive line. Your backup quarterback, you relied on Tua not getting hurt. These are mistakes, not on McDaniel, not on Tua, not on the offense, not on any players. This is a GM mistake right here. You thought that Skylar Thompson would be good enough. And clearly you admitted you were wrong because you released him and went with Huntley. So then you knew you made the mistake. That's one of the biggest mistakes. Now you have a quarterback under contract that's making $50 million a year that can't even play, has only played 17 games once in 5 years. We did 7 years with Tannehill, and now we're going to do 6 years for sure with Tua. So how long do you keep going with a system that isn't working? The only way, if you're staying, we're keeping you. After 8 years, no playoff wins, we're keeping you. You want to show that you care and you want to show that you're growing as a GM, then you have to admit you're wrong. Then draft a quarterback. That's where I'll come out and say, you know what? Hats off to Chris Greer. Hats off to Chris Greer if he drafts a quarterback. I'm not saying with our first pick. We have the 13th overall pick. You're not getting, this quarterback class isn't like the greatest, most exciting. You have Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward. They're both going off the board. And probably, you know how it goes every year with the hype of the draft and the combine, there's going to be a third quarterback that slips up and is going to be in the top 10. I'll promise you that 3 quarterbacks will go in the top 10. What last year was 5. 3 will go in the top, or 5 went in like the top 13. 3 will probably go in the top 10. There's a lot of teams that you got. The Browns could probably even draft a quarterback. You know the Giants are for sure taking a quarterback. The Titans are probably taking a quarterback. The Raiders are probably taking. That's 4 teams. So 4 teams might take a quarterback. I don't know who those other 2 guys are going to be, but it's very possible that all 4 of those teams draft a quarterback. with their first pick. That being said, you're going to have one of the best linemen available at 13. I think you got to take it, especially with, we don't even know if Armstead returns, and he's always missing 4 or 5 games. Teron Armstead is the Tua of linemen. So we need him when he's in there. It's a great O-line, but we need a solid tackle that is going to be, on this team for 5 years. That's going to kind of make us make a run. We need a 5-year tackle. All right. You let Robert Hunt leave. That was a mistake. You let Van Ginkel leave. That was a mistake. 2 mistakes that weren't. And Van Ginkel was not going to be expensive. And yes, maybe he's doing great because he's in the Brian Flores defense that he learned on and he was drafted by. But he played great last year coming in when Phillips got hurt. I felt like he was a good personality of the team. Really upset that they let him walk. Christian Wilkins, I understand letting walk because look at Sealer. He's putting up numbers better than Wilkins ever did in his 5 years with the Dolphins. So that was the right move. But Robert Hunt was a solid guard for us. You got to pay him. We drafted him in a late round. You got to pay that. If you have Robert Hunt there, that's a core piece to this line. And I think that was a mistake thinking that you didn't have to pay him. So now you're gonna pay by drafting a quarterback, a tackle with that 13th pick. I mean, I can't imagine not. And I would be very upset if they didn't. Because that's the biggest need. Even if Armstead says he's coming back, I need to know that we have one of the best tackles, the young tackles in the NFL. And there's a few guys, and there's one, we're set up to get that. With Travis Hunter and let's say 3 quarterbacks going away, and then probably a wide receiver and another cornerback leaving or an edge, you're talking about 7 or 8 non-tackles taken. We're talking about one of the 2 best linemen in all of college football are going to be sitting at 13. You got to take it, especially when that's our biggest weakness. And then maybe in the second round, you take that quarterback. You take one of those quarterbacks. I don't know who it is. But maybe you take one of those quarterbacks. I'm fine with that. If you don't take a quarterback in that second round and you want to do it in the third, if we even have a third, or we don't have a third or fourth. I forget which round it is. But if you want to, in the later rounds, take it, I'm fine with that. But one of your first 3 picks should be a quarterback. And then if it's not, I think you go with a young safety and maybe another lineman. I don't know. I don't even care because I'm thinking like maybe in free agency you pick up another lineman, right? This all depends on if Teron Armstead comes back, if he doesn't even retire. How do we, if he's looking at like this, like, do I do one more run? What's the point? His knees are he's not doing well. He's not doing well physically. How do we even, if he doesn't come back, what a hole we have. Your best lineman is your center. Tough situation to be in right now. So that's why I expect him to take a tackle. And then, we'll find out more with time with what players are going to come back, who retires, who we release, who we're not going to re-sign. Do they re-sign Javon Holland? I don't think so. I don't think he deserves a big contract from us. He's definitely regressed, which is shocking because I thought he was going to be one of this, like, the face of the defense for years. After his rookie year, I was like, this guy's going to be the face of our defense. And it's really disappointing, to be honest. And it's really sad. But overall, I don't think we get upset about the Tyreek Hill situation. I think it's a blessing in disguise. I think we got a great defensive coach. I think we have a young defensive core to build around with just those 4 players, Chop, Brooks, Sealer, Phillips, Chubb, Ramsey. Say what you want about Ramsey. He's still a good leader. He still plays hard. He does things that don't necessarily you see in the stat box. But I think he's great. You have Kodu. Now you can build around those. They know our defense through Coach Weaver. It's our second year. He hasn't had a second-year defensive coach once, Mike McDaniel. So now Mike McDaniel can focus on an O-line, a new scheme, a scheme that doesn't rely on Tyreek Hill. And if Tyreek Hill stays, great. But then we know what the offense is going to be. Going forward, starting the year off with Jonnu Smith, that will be fun, knowing that he's a core part of this offense. Kind of like the 49ers. They throw to Kittle a lot. Let's do that. Let's run it back. But I think offensively, you hope maybe Armstead comes back for one more year. You draft a tackle. You bring in one more lineman. Then we have something we can talk about. You got to stay positive. But it could go south really fast. You could lose Armstead. We lose Tyreek. Now you have holes offensively. You're stuck with Tua. Whether you love Tua or not, I love him too. I love him as a person. I like him some games when he plays. I don't think he's the answer. I don't think he's going to win a Super Bowl. I think he could win a playoff game. But then what? You know what I mean? Like, ultimately, is he going to beat Mahomes or Allen or Burrow? I don't think so. So you might as well try to figure out, maybe there's a young guy that can. Like dude, Bo Nix. How do you not watch Bo Nix and go, what are we doing? What are we doing? Bo Nix is better. Bo Nix is better than Tua. He's better. He's going to have a better career. He's going to win more games, and he's going to be in a tougher division. I don't know how Bo Nix is going to win a playoff game, because even if they're going to lose to the Bills really bad. But then even next year, if they're better or they're good, they still got to play Harbaugh and Mahomes. So, it's harder to make the playoffs already if you're Denver. But Bo Nix is way better than Tua. He looks way better. You know what I mean? Jaden Daniels is better than Tua. These are young quarterbacks that are in the league, that are rookies, that are better. They're better. You can't tell me they're not better. Going forward, all 32 teams one day, in the next 10 years, all 32 teams are going to have scrambling quarterbacks. Burrow will be the last true pocket quarterback and still be in the league. But we got to find a guy that's mobile, that can run. That's where the league is going. So what are we doing with a pocket quarterback? It's not working anymore. All these other guys can buy time. They can make plays. You need a playmaker to win in this league. And now you have a window where you have a good defense. And how long is that going to last with these guys? So, we got to keep that together. But, man, you watch Bo Nix, you're like, we're doomed. We're doomed. We're doomed. And I'm trying to be optimistic about it, like I said, with what I talked about with, hey, grab some linemen and stuff. But it's hard, man. It's hard to be optimistic. I'm just curious to see how they're gonna rebound, because maybe that's why Tyreek's upset too. He's like, he's watching the Broncos play good. He's like, that's a young quarterback. So you got Harbaugh in his first year making the playoffs. So you got Harbaugh, and the Chargers are only going to get better. Bo Nix is a rookie making it. You still got the Chiefs, who will be relevant. Even if they fall off a little bit, they're still going to be a playoff team. There's no way they're not going to be a playoff team next year, right? There's no way. Even if they fell off and they went to 10-7, that's crazy to think they could lose 7. They did almost last year, right? They went 11-6. That's 3 teams right there. You still have the Ravens outside of an injury. You still have the Bengals, and you still have the Bills. All those teams are going to be playoff teams. So then you have to hope the Steelers aren't. You have to hope the Browns aren't. You have to hope, Houston and someone's coming out of that division. So you still have Houston. The Colts, who knows what happens. The Jags, who knows what happens with the new coach. If Trevor Lawrence is improves. So you have one out of that division. So you have that division. You have one out of the North between the Bengals and Ravens. And then you have 3 out of the West now. And then you have the Bills. How are you going to keep up? It doesn't look good, man. It looks like we're a year away from a total rebuild, which is depressing, because it's like, oh, so this is the first year of a dark hole we're about to go in. It was 8-9 this year. Then next year we wake up and we kept the GM, we kept the coach, and here we go. Tyreek left, and offensively, the O-line didn't turn out to be as good as it should have, and we end up 7-10, and it's just like a rough, ugly year. And then at that point, they clean house. Then the GM and coach is fired. Maybe Ross moves on from ownership and gives it to his friend. And then you bring in a whole new system, and maybe they cut Tua, who knows, and then just deal with dead cap money. And then 7-10, you're just drafting what? You have a top 10 pick, and maybe you move up and you take a quarterback, and then you got to hope again. You got to hope you pick the right quarterback. And then if you didn't, it's another. It's just like, oh man. What are they going to do? Are they going to, or this is what the Dolphins could do. They do this. This is already frustrating, the fact that we didn't make any moves with our GM. They're going to do something where they make a splash to get everyone excited. That's what they're going to do. Whether it's on the defensive side, which I don't think defensively they need to. I think you just hope Chubb and Phillips come back and they play great and you have the core like we talked about. But like offensively, maybe they move on from Tyreek and they make a big splash on the O-line and they draft a guy and then like add like a veteran running back to like pound the ball. I don't even know. Something that will excite us. Maybe if it's with a backup, who knows? Something to trick us. I got to be honest, I'm worried. When I look at the league, and I look at like everyone else and I see other teams and the way it's going and how all these quarterbacks drafted this past year, which was supposed to be a weaker draft class with Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Drake May, and Penix. All five looked relatively good. Four of them are scrambling quarterbacks. You're like, oh, and that's way more exciting. They can make plays with their legs, and that seems like what you need. Like, look at the playoffs right now. Bo Nix, Herbert can use his legs outside of his arm. Mahomes definitely can. Then you have Russell Wilson. I guess you can, but they're going to be a one and done. And then you have Lamar Jackson, and you have Josh Allen. All of those quarterbacks can make plays with their legs, like consistently. Every drive, they're running the ball. Every drive, they might run the ball, whether it's for 4 yards or for 20 yards. Pretty much, they're running the ball every drive. Even if it's for 3 yards, they're not getting sacked. They're like, oh, play's done. Here's 3 yards. Let me run out of bounds for 3 yards, right? And then in the NFC, Jalen Hurts can run. And then you have Jaden Daniels. Jared Goff doesn't, okay? Sam Darnold doesn't. Jordan Love can a little bit, but you wouldn't say, it's kind of like a Herbert-ish. He will a little bit, but he's not looking to scramble. And then you have Stafford, pocket, and then a Baker, pocket. But he can run too. They all have the ability to run, but they don't. They're more pocket guys. Oddly, NFC is very pockety. AFC is very, can make plays with their legs, which, to be honest, is the stronger conference. Way more tougher teams in the AFC. Although I think the Lions could win it all. So, I don't know. It just doesn't look good. I can't imagine, let's see if Teron Armstead comes back. If he doesn't come back, now you have you need 3 major pieces on the line. You need a left tackle. You need a right tackle. You can move Austin Jackson to guard. Move him to right guard. You keep your center, and then maybe you have a young guy at left guard. You need 2 strong pieces. You need to bring in 2 new personalities to the line, regardless. Whether it's the draft or free agent, 2 need to come with or without Armstead. Okay? That has to happen. And then you probably need someone who can just run the ball up the middle for 4th and 1s. So we don't have to try to get... You need good guards that can, really help us on short yardage plays. And then, you need a quarterback. We need a quarterback that can play. We have one, but we need someone who's good enough to compete with Tua. We need someone that can be like, I'm going for the starting job. If you bring in Daniel Jones or Kirk Cousins, we're like, hey, we're not saying that you're not the starter. I want to go in and say, hey, Tua's not necessarily our starter. It's got to be that good of a backup. Otherwise, you have to assume he's going to get hurt. I don't want to play 2-second throwing the ball out. I don't want to do that anymore. It didn't work for 3 years now. He needs to be able to sit in the pocket for 4 seconds and break the defense down and maybe get sacked. And if he doesn't stay healthy, then so be it. But then we have a backup that's good enough to make a run. But you got to draft a quarterback. Ultimately, as I talk it out, we need to draft a quarterback this year. I don't care if he's a top prospect, but maybe you can develop a guy that can learn this system, but there needs to be a guy drafted with one of our first 3 picks. That's where I'm at. You got to. And if you don't, I'm pissed. If you don't, I'm really pissed because then I'm like, oh, then you're selling yourself on the fact that you think Tua can win a Super Bowl. If you don't draft a guy, then you're telling me that you think Tua's the guy, and if he stays healthy, you can win a Super Bowl. When he can't. He could win a playoff game, but he's not going to win a Super Bowl. So why not bring a young guy that can maybe be young? Maybe he's not ready yet, but he develops into a star that is maybe a mobile quarterback. That's all. I don't know. I'm going to put out an episode later this week with my buddy Anthony, going over the playoffs and what our predictions are. So if you want to watch that, like and subscribe. I'll probably put that out on Thursday or Friday, probably Friday. But let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Maybe we'll have more news on what's happening, but we'll see you guys later. Bye.